welcome to episode 5, Leans, Taffies, and Rocks. What else?
We took a hiatus last week because of our technical difficulties. So let's talk about the very first thing, probably the most relevant thing for many people. COVID reopenings.
Indeed. There's a lot to say about that because we obviously have the states right beneath us, which is like a big pot of mess just blowing over, and they're seeping their way into our through our borders through technicalities. So got to be aware of them, even though we shouldn't have to be.
We saw a New York license plate today in Toronto, July 4th weekend.
Indeed. How he got in here, I don't know, but I didn't like it. Go back to where you came from, as some would say.
Kind of feels like with the reopenings, I mean, I know in Vancouver especially, all my friends are like, well, everybody pretty much is like, fuck COVID, because there's no cases there anymore. And so like all my friends who live in downtown Vancouver especially, people don't really care. They're not really socially distancing anymore. There are people eating in restaurants now. Like, from the looks of it, most people feel like it's pretty much normal. And then like 10 kilometers away, not even, friends who live outside the downtown core are a little bit more cautious, I would say, and still trying to make sure that they follow all the safety protocols and all that stuff. But all like the malls are open, everything's open, but everything has new regulations.
One good side effect of all this, all the sales. Everything is half off, and then even whenever you read the half off price, you get to the cash, it's even more off. It's like they're doing a mass dumping of all their stock that just sat there idle. I'd say if you don't mind being quote unquote brave and going into these stores, some great deals.
Well, I wonder though if people have like survivor's guilt, you know? Like, I managed to make it through quarantine and then the whole pandemic lockdown, and I didn't get corona, and I want to go to the mall, or I want to go shopping, or I want to go eat in a restaurant, but then maybe they feel bad at the same time because they're like, maybe it's not over, or there are still people dying, but not where I am.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I'm curious how the world is going to coordinate jurisdiction and all these, because even within Canada, the provinces are starting to put up barriers where like people who are found camping in BC who are from Alberta are being kicked out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm wondering what the new norm is going to be in terms of how we legislate boundaries.
Well, I think BC is especially, like, I think BC was the kid in class who, when everybody got a bad grade on a test, they got like a few points better, and then they're trying to like set the model, set the tone for the rest of the country to be like, this is how you get through, this was how we got through the pandemic. And the doctor who's been advising on the coronavirus cases in BC, Dr. Bonnie Henry, is like a hero, and everybody's praising her for her diligence in looking after the coronavirus, specifically in BC. So I wonder if I just wonder if they're sort of kicking the Albertans out for camping because they don't want to ruin what they've worked on, I guess, as a province.
I get it. Just worried about, like, even boundaries, not even in terms of territory, but person to person. Like, all boundaries are being redrawn. Like, social boundaries of thought, of speech, of distance, of just everything is being redrawn. And I think we're at the tip of the iceberg of how things are going to change. Like, all the things that are going to come as a domino effect from everything that's happening through COVID, like rental issues. people who are falling behind on rent. How's that going to look in terms of the amount of people that are outside, living outside? In Montreal recently, for National Moving Day, vacancy rates have left people outdoors. What's going to happen with those people? Because there's less compassion to bringing people inside of houses.
Yeah. Yep.
Everything's going to change because of social distancing. It's going to have like a reverberating effect.
But I wonder at what point that will be, like, I do wonder if there will be some sense of the way that it used to be after, let's say, like a vaccine gets released. Will they put less pressure on people to socially distance? Will they put, will they have public gatherings of hundreds of people again? Will there be festivals ever again? Will there be concerts and all that stuff? Because I imagine, like, people are already rebooking shows. Like, we were listening to the Joe Rogan show, and people are obviously doing comedy shows. So then what does that look like at a concert? What does that look like in a sporting event? And then eventually, after the coronavirus cases are no more cases than the flu, or no more cases than measles, or no more cases than other viruses that we know about, will they be like, okay, fuck it, let's just go back to the way it was because the coast looks clear?
What I think is on the horizon is there will be a vaccine that's going to be made, and then it's going to get, now we're going to get the next discussion, which is what we have for all vaccines. People who take them, and then there's the anti-vaxxers. Then the discussion for what the new social norm will be those who have proven they've taken the vaccine can partake in these new norms. Those who have not will be shunned. There's going to be a lot of effects.
I feel like that the anti-vaxxers are really coming in hot during the coronavirus because it's a chance to prove their point, because it's on the verge of a vaccination versus like existing vaccination research.
Mm-hmm.
This is brand new. So I think anti-vaxxers and conspiracy theorists who are alleging that coronavirus is a conspiracy and that the vaccination is going to be some sort of non-vaccination, it's going to be something else.
Trojan horse virus.
I feel like it's going to be a really interesting binary societal divide, because whether people really cared about anti-vaxxers or not, considering how crazy this pandemic has been and that people have lived through it, I feel like people who would dismiss anti-vaxxers for being crazy before might actually think about it, even if it's for like 5 minutes. They might think, do I want to be vaccinated with this?
It's a current day discussion versus, well, we've all had it, so we should keep doing it.
But the good thing is that there will be people who are like, fuck yeah, give me the vaccine.
Yeah.
And that the people who are a little more skeptical can just see what happens to them first.
True. And it's this, I think, moving forward, I think now that we've entered the 2020s, the revolution will forever be televised. From here on out, I think people will see the power in their camera, in everything, and their microphone and their voice. Everybody, point in case us, is going to maximize the tools that are readily available to them to express their will, to enlighten as much as they wish, to provide as much information and knowledge that they intend to disseminate through their own self-righteous wants. We will know everything that is happening if we want to listen for it. Yeah. I think.
Well, I do also think that it's going to be I think it's going to be a stressful time. It's already a stressful time, but I think it's going to be a very stressful time. I don't think people think of a global identity, because there are very few global things that every generation can say they take part in. And this is, well, coronavirus, and also obviously Black Lives Matter and everything that has sparked off of George Floyd's death. Those two things, whether you're living under a rock or not, now is probably the time that everyone as a global identity can say that they're being affected by those two things.
I wonder how much the riots affected the spike in cases in the US versus the riots in Canada, which appear to have not, and have been documented by government officials to not have a spike in cases. So I'm wondering if the spike in the U.S. is attributed to those protests, and or if they
It's a
aren't,
conspiracy.
or yeah, if it is, who knows? We can't really say, because in Canada we might protest more intelligently, quote unquote, by actually keeping some distance intentionally or wearing a mask. Like, not to boast, but we tend to be generally starting from a sharper point than Americans for anything on an initial basis. So we might have better initial reactions, which might be the critical segment of our reactions. They tend to do a lot of stupid things. Unfortunately, that's just the way it's perceived.
That party of college students
Who can catch COVID first?
They invited a person who tested positive for coronavirus, and then they had a bet going of who would test positive first, or who would catch it first. And they was that the same one where they said the prize was like a casket of some sort?
I didn't even get that far.
I don't know what it was, but all I know is that the premise is stupid enough. And then
It's another Tide Pod challenge.
Yeah, there's lots of that. Well, there was the coronavirus challenge where there was this girl who licked a toilet bowl seat in an airplane, and then she died like 2 days later.
Shame.
And then there was a guy I just saw who went to a party, felt really shitty about it, and apologized to his family and apologized to his friends for endangering them. And then he died the day after he apologized.
Wow.
Yeah. I just read that like yesterday. And I'm like, man, I get why you might be skeptical and why there might be some sort of conspiracy going on, because it can be very rational, like watching conspiracy theorists speak about certain things in the past. I've been like, that kind of lines up. And there's lots of stuff that have actually been proven to be true. So I wouldn't be surprised if coronavirus was a conspiracy of some sort, but it doesn't change the fact that it still kills a lot of people and has killed a lot of people. And so I think it's just common courtesy not to be dumb, because you don't know who you're affecting.
Yep.
Especially because of all the people who tested positive and then are asymptomatic. And you're like, oh shit, I had corona for how long? Who knows?
Dangerous times.
Indeed.
Dangerous times.
Is that good? Anything else on reopenings? No.
I don't know. I just feel that we don't even know. Like, we're not even anywhere near knowing what this is all going to end up being. Especially with the way the U.S. is going.
Also, there is a lot of memes that are like, you think the first wave is over, we're still, like, you're scared of the second wave when we're still in the first wave. Because it's not like you look at the U.S. and I think the whole of Canada have had, 1,400 deaths over except I can't remember what I was reading, but it just became ridiculous because the number of deaths in Canada versus the number of new coronavirus cases in 2 days in the U.S. totaled like 100,000.
Yeah, we did a little over 100,000 since January, and they've added that amount in the past 2 days. Well, a couple days ago.
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway,
whatever it was, like, the numbers comparison was ridiculous, and that's why I really would appreciate that the border stays closed.
Yeah, that thing needs to stay closed for
the
a
rest
hot
of
minute.
the year.
Keep that shit down there. Do not want it up here.
And I almost think that it's in the Liberal government's best interest to do that. Because I think if they open the border, they're not going to get that vote very easily next go around.
I think it's going to be staying closed.
I don't know anybody who wants the U.S. border open. Like,
I don't. And the approved travel list has excluded them pretty much everywhere. What's that going to do for the future of their economy? I don't know. It's the fact that the U.S. has now had a wall put up around it is going to be an interesting dynamic to watch, especially with their elections coming up in November. 2020 is far from done. Far from done. And COVID still has a lot of story left to tell.
Yeah.
A whole lot.
I definitely do not think that it is over.
Cool.
All right. Topic number 2.
Gen Z versus Gen Y, the millennials. Us.
Yes, we are millennials.
Indeed.
I know we look so young.
Oh, Lord. Lord. My Grace is coming in nice
We
right
look so
now.
young and hip. And we have TikTok. And
I don't know. We don't. They have TikTok.
oh, right. Oh, yeah, I was trying to, never mind.
Yes. I think that's one of those apps that draws the line.
What?
TikTok. They hate Facebook. We hate TikTok. Generalizing.
I think TikTok is great, but I just won't get it. Like I'm okay. Like if I see a TikTok thing on Instagram, I'll watch it.
Yep.
But I'm not gonna get TikTok.
I'm not partaking in the ticking and talking.
If somebody sends me a link, I'll watch the web version. But I'm not gonna sign up for TikTok, and I have not, and I have no interest.
If I wanted to record myself, I'd just do it on Instagram. And I'm not going to be dancing. I'm not doing no memes. I'm not doing no sketches, no skits. I'm an old man.
I'm also very happy that I don't work in marketing anymore because I would have had to learn TikTok if I wanted to stay up on the game. And that's a big reason why I left marketing anyways, is because I don't want to interact with Gen Z.
Yeah.
I mean that in the nicest way possible. I don't want to interact with that audience or have to cater to that audience as a job.
Yeah.
Because I barely want to cater to millennials.
I'm interested in learning what they actually think versus what they've been programmed with, because they're now finally becoming adults, so we're getting to see them as grown people. So we're starting to get an idea of what's important to them and what matters to them and how they voice themselves. Like an interesting one was how they basically took down Donald Trump's rally by buying all the tickets through a TikTok initiative that they all were a part of. That was the hip thing for them, for the Gen Zs, hip. Like that's interesting to me. They asserted their power so stealthily, but effectively and nonchalantly. It makes me wonder, like, they've been watching us and just looking at us like idiots, like, you guys just are fucking up. You guys been doing this all wrong. Like, I feel like they'll have a lot to show us, but I'm also curious how feeble they are emotionally.
I actually don't think that Gen Z is feeble emotionally.
Me neither. Exactly.
I actually think that Gen
They're stronger.
Z has, like, it's every generation's gift and curse, which is you go through it first. Mm-hmm. And then whatever lessons you have, the generation after you learns from it. Where the millennial generation took, like, I feel like the millennial generation, one of the more definitive characteristics is that we are interested in success fast. We're interested in thinking a lot bigger. We don't necessarily think about process and longevity or experience. We just think, can you do it? Yes, go do it. And I think that's a very millennial mindset. If you look at how the tech boom of all those tech companies came during the millennial generation, is because this is the mindset. And a lot of people will call it an entitlement, but I'd like to separate the white millennials who started all those tech companies like Mark Zuckerberg and whoever from like millennials who are not those people, because I really do think that it's not so much an entitlement. There's entitlement in a white male, period. But I think for the millennials, it's less of an entitlement. It's more of a realization that you can actually live better and be better if you take matters into your own hands. Mm-hmm. And I think our parents, we saw how I'm talking about a child of immigrants, where you see how hard your parents had to work and all of the laws that they had to overcome. Like, it's crazy to think that if a law wasn't passed in my mom's generation, I wouldn't be in Canada. And it's not that far. It's not that far back in history. So I do think that the new generation, like, our fault was, I guess we started to raise awareness about mental health, but the Gen Zers are like, they became born into mental health awareness.
Yeah, they have a lot of, like you said, each generation gets something that they inherit from the other generation that they can improve upon easily. And I think they are seeing the true power of social media and how not to let it control them, but how to actually control the narrative that they want to put out there. I feel like they're going to show us a lot, and the conventional method of news acquisition that we currently have, they have no connection to it because we lost connection to the newspaper and the local news within our generation, and we've been stuck trying to navigate the mess that's been left, like the CNNs and the Foxes, whereas they've been disconnected from that crappy remnant that we've been on. They don't really care about it, and they're creating their own avenues of info. And I think that's going to help our generation later on in terms of how we get information versus fake news. Even though Trump uses it for everything, there's a shit ton of it. So,
but I don't think that's ever going to change. I think every generation gets smarter. But I also think that means that every generation gets more stressed out, if that makes sense, because there is more stimulus, there are more opportunities, there are more avenues to do different things in different ways. Like the path to success and even access to information, it all grows exponentially with every generation. So I think that Gen Z's downfall will be, like for us in the millennial category, we just want things quick. Like let's just get to it. Whereas the generation before us is like, no, you gotta go and do this first, and you gotta go and do this first, and it's gonna take this time, and blah blah blah. We're like, no, let's fast track. Millennials were like, let's fast track. And Gen Z is almost like, what took you so long? I think they look at us and they're like, it's not that,
not that hard.
It's not that hard. And I think that's every generation's view. Like we would say that to the generation that came before us. But I really do think that the downfall of Gen Z will be the amount of stress. It's like, okay, so you're the most woke in terms of mental health and mental health awareness, and how like they're building empathy into curriculum, they're building grief and loss into curriculum to help kids understand their emotions. They're bringing in emotional intelligence coaching earlier in childhood development and curriculum. And so if that's the case, we're gonna have to see like if they're gonna put their money where their mouth is, because all the Gen Z memes that I see are like people don't really bully each other in the same way that they used to, where it's like not cool to do that anymore. It's actually cool to be like, dude, love is love. Yeah. Like kids are growing up with that, which is great, but I wonder how long that like what is their thing.
What's their snap point? So yeah, I think to kind of surmise what you're saying, I think their mental load is going to be heavier because of the amount of stimulus that they'll be readily plugged into.
Yeah.
But I think each generation gets their shift in their generation that shifts the discussion, the discourse, the actual trajectory of where they're going. Like the 9/11 occurrence for us, the world shifted while we were growing during that time frame. So we got to feel the shift of those events. I think they're going to have an event like every generation does, and we'll see how they change from there. But I think they're at their infancy of being adults, so they're just a new player on the stage right now. They still have a lot of track left. And I think kind of leads into why each generation thinks the past one was trash, or no, why the next generation is viewed as trash by the previous one, because it's like fully grown adults looking at children versus waiting till they get to the point where they were at, where we are currently at, and then judging to see where they were in their 30s versus where we were in our 30s. We judge them as people in 30s looking at people in their 20s, which is the view will never be proper from either side.
I didn't feel old or didn't feel like I was part of a different generation until one of my students, who's like 6 years younger than me, 7 years younger than me, was like, oh, whatever, you're a millennial. And I know I'm a millennial, and older people have called me a millennial. That was the first time that a younger person called me a millennial, and I was like, excuse you? And so from then on, I just gave them shit for being Gen Z. Like, I just gave them, like, are you TikToking right now? Or, like, are you Snapchatting right now? Because why? I don't know. I would just give my students shit for being in Gen Z or being Gen Z, because it was the first time that I got called a millennial from someone who was younger. And it's different when it's like a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old. You know, it's like it's different when it's a kid. But when it's an adult calling you out on your generation,
it's like, ooh, I'm that.
And like one of my students, he's gonna laugh if he watches this. He just started a podcast with his cousin, and they were like, oh, do you have any tips on podcasting? And I'm like, we've only been doing it for like 4 episodes, so like this is what I can tell you, but it's not necessarily advice. And he goes, I asked what it is, and he goes, I can't remember the name, sorry, I'll find out. But he says, it's not, you're not the audience. And I said, excuse me, what is the audience? And he said, Gen Z. And I was like, damn it. He goes, no, he actually said young millennials and Gen Z. And I'm like, young millennials? What the shit?
Shame.
I am a young millennial.
No.
And he's like, I don't think we talked about it much, but I'm a middle millennial though.
Yeah.
Like, you're an old millennial, like you just make the cutoff, then there's me, and then there's another 5 years, and it's like a younger millennial. Because apparently he's a young millennial. I didn't even know that term. I didn't know that term until he said it in just a week ago or a few days ago. And I was like, damn, am I that?
Gotta make room for the new ones. They're coming.
He told me I was Tita status. Tita is auntie in Filipino. And I was like, but I've always been a Tita, like a real one, to kids. I guess not to adults though. So that was very odd.
Another point is, since, from my perspective, Gen Z's in their just becoming adult stage, I kind of like to equate it to, remember when we were in the 2000s and our music was lean with it, rock with it, and, you know, shake that laffy taffy, all that good stuff? It was trash. And now that we're 10 years, 20 years out of it, we all know that it was trash. And our parents thought it was trash. And our parents thought we looked like trash with 3 XXL t-shirts on. Most definitely. They're in their Laffy Taffy days right now. So all that broccoli music and, I don't know.
What the hell is broccoli music?
That little yachty dude, whoever he was, who dressed up like Oprah and all that music where it sounds like, what is that noise to us? It makes sense, because it is noise. And when our parents were hearing us and I said, what was that noise? It made sense, because it was fucking noise. Yeah, they're in their noise phase.
But my mom still can tell the difference between Jay-Z's voice and Drake's voice and Kanye's voice and Eminem's voice.
Indeed. No, you get those 1 or 2s like during the 2000s. We had Dipset. We all can say, you know, Dipset was appreciated. 50 was appreciated. T.I. appreciated. But we didn't need Laffy Taffy. We didn't need D4L.
What were we going to dance to at the school dances?
Yeah.
And Tootsie Roll.
You know what I'm saying?
Whoa.
Why not?
Felt the wind from your hands.
Woo!
Stop it.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Shake that Laffy Taffy.
Well, anyways, I don't even know what Gen Z music is.
It's noise.
That's not my algorithm on Spotify.
No, it's not mine either.
I don't get that music because I'm not listening to hot new hip hop.
Me neither.
And I'm not listening to best or rap right now. If that's one of them, I don't. I will listen to the R&B of Gen Z. I'll say that because I'm always looking for R&B. But
I don't want to hear little baby, little yachty, the baby. Well, no. There's some stuff that I like, but in general, their artistry is not for me. They can have a hot track here and there, just like
some songs I really like. The Baby.
No. I'm trying
Pop
to think.
Smoke.
No. From
Takashi.
Those 2 kids, Ray Shremmerd. What was their big track? No Flex Zone. Like that was when the youngins made something where the older generation was like, I can enjoy this. We get that occasionally from this generation right now. We get that occasionally.
The thing is, the garbage music is always for enjoyment. Even Lean With It, Rock With It, that was still a song that we played in the car when we went long driving. We're like, this is a great song.
Indeed.
This is a summer jam or whatever. But in hindsight, in hindsight, it's not great music. It's just, it was like a song.
It's music for the times.
It's music for the times, but it's also meant for just like, like, it's not, I'm not going to listen.
It's not heavy yet because they ain't got no life to put heaviness into it.
Well, there's not a lot of artists who are on those playlists who are like hot now, trending now, that I'm going to listen to their body of work.
They need to.
These are not albums. These are not artists where I think, yes, this is an album for me.
They're going through their trash. Like a lot of the stars that we had in the 2000s, their act aged out. It couldn't grow. It was for a time, and then you got
like Soulja Boy.
Yeah, then you get the seeds like Kendrick, a Cole, a Drake, who were students during that time who weren't the hot shit, but they were putting in the work to be the relevant shit later on, to speak to their generation, not just make noise for their generation. They actually became voices for their generation. I think Gen Z will get their time, but right now they ain't got nothing for me.
Right. So you're saying that Gen Z doesn't have a voice for their generation yet?
Not yet. It's just a bunch of noise. Yeah, maybe she'll age, but then again, did Omarion? No.
Yeah, but Billie Eilish and Omarion, very different.
I agree.
Billie Eilish's global reach is huge, and I don't really know her music. I just know that she's a really big artist, but she's really well respected by like
artists,
like our generation of artists and older generations of artists respect her. Omarion's not the same. You cannot compare those two.
That's fair.
You could pick somebody else.
I don't think there was one that I could think of who was young and of that age and grew with the people. Alicia Keys, but she was still a bit older.
But you know what? I don't actually think there's been an artist like Billie Eilish ever.
Fair. I don't know much about her.
Because, well, I just know that she has a lot of followers. Mm-hmm. Everybody and their dogs know who she is. And I'm like, I don't know who she is. And then I had to Google her because I never heard of her before. But like, all my little nieces know who she is. And then after like Googling her and seeing who she was, she's apparently like a very talented musician. Still haven't heard songs from her, but I don't think she would be as crazy famous as she is now if she didn't have access to the things that her generation had access to.
Yeah, she has made use of social media to grow herself in a way where I don't have to know about her for her to be the biggest thing. It's
not easy, like, and she can just exist, and she's totally fine with that.
She has her own ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's what they do. They know how to create their ecosystems, whereas we just try to integrate into all ecosystems.
No, it's not even that. It's that we built those and they use them.
Yeah, it's true.
We built them, they perfected them, and they're using them.
Standing on a giant shoulder can see further than the giant.
I would like to use the term little people.
Yeah.
Topic number 3. Speaking of social media, looks like social media is getting back to normal. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to see less Black Lives Matter posts, but they're still around. Mm-hmm. It's not completely as it was before, and I'm starting to see a lot of people posting about, now that social media is back to normal, don't forget to do this, and this. So I'm wondering if, like, the moment has passed.
I feel like nothing lasts at its peak for very long, but I think out of this movement, I think this time, all the energy that it created was substantially harnessed, if not completely, at least sufficiently, by those who need to move this ball forward. I think this feels like we don't need the spotlight to make progress at this point. The spotlight would be better because it would resolve a lot of things that are still injustices, but I feel like we're going to get something tangible out of this moment. Maybe not a cure or a remedy, but we're going to move the ball substantially forward for the next generation. And I think that's not to be scoffed at. But what I like that's happening as a side effect is, I think it's a default, if you're logical, whenever you see justice being given to the ancestors of slavery on this continent, it's an immediate conversation that brings attention to the obvious atrocities to the indigenous as well, like the name changes that are being pushed by FedEx and Nike on Washington to change the name from Redskin to something else. Like, that doesn't happen without the Black Lives Movement, because they've been pushing for that for a while. But once you shed light on injustice, it becomes a threat to injustice everywhere.
Could you say that the Black Lives Matter movement, as it has just gotten all that energy now, because as we know, this has always been a thing for the Black community, would you say that they're kind of like, if we could draw an analogy, they're the older sibling that is trying to pave the way for the younger sibling?
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily pave the way, like maybe that's not the best wording, but when they put forward, things like when they're calling to light a lot of things that they feel need to be changed, that it causes people to broaden that lens as well and see how indigenous communities have also been oppressed for many, many, many years, and that if they did not die, none of us would be here. And so I think that's an analogy that I might use, if that's proper.
I think by shining a light on any Black issue on this continent, you can't avoid noticing the atrocities to the indigenous. It's impossible, because our history on this continent is tied in brotherhood with them in trying to, sometimes the escaped slaves would join the indigenous tribes to then fight against the white slave owners. Like, the fight was never against one another, it's always been by proxy with one another. So, like, I'm a big fan of all the attention that's being brought to those, because the name changes, I feel like that's the indigenous low-hanging fruit. And if the light from all the injustice to Black people helps to, it's kind of like setting a trail of gunpowder. Once you ignite it here, it's going to make that jump over there, as long as the baton is caught and ran with.
Maybe that is what is occurring, because there's a lot of people who are saying that, certain things are being done, but it's not defunding the police, it's not getting justice and putting murderers behind bars, it's not a complete halt or stop to police brutality. But I think, as you said, like, these are low-hanging fruits. Mm-hmm. So if a brand is willing to change a name,
it's something.
It's not the answer, but it's not bad.
Like, if a statue comes down,
it might be for vanity, but at least it's being done.
But that vanity, like, one example, a Canadian example, an indigenous group, I think it's in Victoria, they said that they feel it's a mockery that whenever they enter the courts to defend themselves, that what greets them is Sir John A. Macdonald, who was one of the greatest indigenous, what's what I'm looking for?
Killers?
Less of a doctored word, yeah, killers. It's like letting them know that you will not get justice through these doors. So even though it seems insignificant, it still has a psychological effect, and I think the next generation will be able to speak to those low-hanging fruits better than we can, because we know we're feeling what we're feeling about those things, but I don't think we've learned or we've acquired the wording to properly describe and put a value on those symbols and how they affect our mental health.
But I also think that people in general, regardless of who's being oppressed or who the oppressor is, change is always associated with size. So if you don't see a large change, if you don't see the change, if you don't feel the change, then it's not a change. And right now people are calling for substantial change, which means that if one statue or one name gets changed, what kind of a change is that? However, what if 100,000 statues get changed? What if every single like every single sports team that was named with a complete disregard and completely racially demeaning to indigenous communities, what if all those names were changed? While one of those things might be really small, and because we're used to wanting big change to say yes, we did that, like all of that matters.
It can be the domino effect. It
It
just
has
takes
to
that
be.
one start. Like George Floyd losing his life brought us where we are. That's one man's life that was lost, but it's created such a discussion that it's creating change that has ripple effects that still are continuing.
And I also think that George Floyd's death wouldn't have been as it was if it weren't for all the deaths that came before him too. So again, while people think that's just one man, or like so many people have died before it, yeah, everybody who has died and is continuing to die every day,
They add to the narrative. They become
everybody
martyrs.
does. All the voices, all those lives are not meaningless. Even the lives who are the lives that are lost in gang violence, that are in like people of colors, all the gangs and all that stuff. If you think about the opportunities that they didn't have, or the lifestyles or the environments that they grew up in, and in how racist institutions created the lack of opportunity for those communities, all of those lives, they're all a part of the narrative.
Move the
So-
ball forward.
Everything, no matter what, like Nipsey Hussle. People might, to like an average white person who knows nothing, oh, that's just a dead rapper. But to his community, to the black community, to people who are his fans, who are not black, who understood what he stood
They
for,
know his value.
they know his value. And everybody has that, no matter how small of a community it is. If you're growing up in like East LA and your brother who was a gang member died because of this and that life still impacts multiple people. Even if it's just one. Even if it's just one, every death impacts at least one life. So I think in looking at like social media and thinking about whether or not it's going back to normal, I don't think it ever can be, because now what's going to be trending more than anything is like viral videos on stupid racists.
What I think is, it's not that it's gone back to normal, it's that it couldn't stay where it was forever. But people are
Nothing
still
can.
on the same narrative. Like the narrative hasn't changed, just how it looks has changed. Because in
How
all
it's presented.
yeah, in all reality, I don't want to be on Instagram all day watching Trump. Nobody does. It's not at a certain time and point you got to be like, okay, let's find something else. Let's find another way to move this ball forward, because right now you're just playing the same record.
I think that is what we were talking about before, where like, well, I think part of it is curation, because these tech companies have the power to create their algorithms, just as Google does. And we know this, especially with TikTok. Everyone's like becoming even more against TikTok because their algorithm allegedly would exclude certain people from having their posts show up to the rest of the TikTok user base. And I think part of it has to be on, obviously, our generation, but the new generation, to understand what curation means, like what self-curation means and digital responsibility means. I think that needs to be digital rights, but more so responsibility, because not everyone is even aware of their own civil rights, but they might have an idea of what they're responsible for.
Sure.
So at like a baby step, understanding what digital responsibility means. If you're 12 years old and you have an Instagram account and a TikTok account, and you are using iChat, whatever the hell, what are you using, a phone, whatever, you have an iPhone, you chat with people through it, or using WhatsApp, whatever it is, to understand what you as an individual, how you should be using that, and what are the consequences of you using it in different ways, because that's going to determine what social media looks like going forward. If you don't want to see certain things, you have the ability to curate it, and then on the other side, the tech companies that create these platforms have the ability to make sure you see it, if they deem it to be something that needs to be seen.
We're entering into, you know how like for us, gender was boy girl, and now we're being tossed into a new reality of spectrum. I feel like, in terms of how our digital information is going to be used, leveraged, disseminated, stored, shared, notified, is a tsunami of change that's coming ahead.
I think it's already happening. Like I can see it quite a lot, especially having to work in that industry. I can see how digital responsibility and digital literacy and the use of social media specifically to for commerce, for messaging, for news outlet, how it is the platform for everything. That social media is the gateway for a TV show, for a movie, for an article or a blog. How the next generation consumes first through social media, and then will go and like you swipe up to go to a website. You click on what a girl is wearing if you want to see where she bought it or whatever person is whatever products they're wearing. It's all through social media. So if that's the case, there has to be some digital responsibility built into not just how parents are raising their children around social media, but also how schools use social media because they do now, especially as a learning tool. I would use it as a way to help adult learners because it's familiar. And that's why all of these posts that are sort of like the digital activism that's going on during the pandemic, I think that's important to stick around because it's so embedded in education and in child rearing and in our everyday lives that if that stuff goes away, I think we'll start to see a like receding of the movement in general.
Fair. I think digital activism is not over. It is just in a state of mutation, and it's gonna provide us some wonders that we don't know to expect.
I think it's like coronavirus in the best possible way, where there was one wave of like, here's all the trauma, let's do all this stuff, sign all the petitions, do what you have to do. Don't be a white supremacist, you must be anti-racist. I think, and now it's like, things are reopening. I think there's gonna be a second wave of like, remember you posted that black square a month ago, what are you doing now? Or remember you did this thing, or don't forget Breonna Taylor's cops are not arrested, or the cops that killed her are not arrested yet. Like there's gonna be that follow-up, and I think Gen Z's really good at receipts. They're like the king and queens and non-binary king and queens of receipts, where they just like, you cannot be dumb. I think it's easy for us to look at Gen Z and be like, oh yeah, they're dumb, just like every other but we secretly know they're smart. I think Gen Z is quite good at holding people accountable because they have to. If you lie, or if you try to hide something, social media will find you.
And they're plugged in. They got the plug.
Yeah.
Plug out.
We thought we'd end off light. We usually end off heavy with the racism, but we're gonna try something different. And so our last topic is VERZUZ.
So there's been a lot of battles and so on, but there are some artists who seem to be unpairable with anybody else. Like they're having a hard time figuring out who Jay-Z could go against, because it's like nobody. Having a hard time figuring out who Missy could go against, because it's nobody. Drake. People like to say Kendrick, Cole, but in reality Kendrick and Cole should go against each other. But Drake touches way more than they do, so you can't really say Drake. But I was thinking, and we've had many discussions about this, because even though Drake and Jay-Z are not the same style of rap artist, they've both had a similar size impact on the generation that's listening to them, in terms of them being the voice that gets followed, their albums being the ones that are waited for, their albums being the flag, like a flag point for where you were in your life. They both have that effect, and they have different generations within their music amongst them. So we think they should have a big a big boy versus 40 track edition to display their full catalogs and see what that would look like. What do you think?
I was when you first said that, I was like, because, I don't know. I think, if we're talking about GOAT status, they're not comparable because they're too different. I can't say, I personally do not think that Drake is a better lyricist or rapper than Jay-Z, in my opinion, like skill-wise. But in terms of music that connects to their generations, I think that's where you could compare them, because
go toe to toe there.
Because Drake defined, I believe, whether he started or not, he defined a musical sound for a mass of people in the same generation as he is. And Jay-Z did the same thing at a different time. But I almost think that it's hard to even compare that, because at the time that Jay-Z started his career and started rapping, the way that the general musical diaspora of the way that people interacted with music was very different. And so even hip hop and rap was viewed very differently when Jay-Z had his career than when Drake has his career. So it's hard to say that that would be a respected battle by others, because Jay-Z influenced rap for a culture. And I don't really know necessarily if that's specific to a generation. I think it's multi-generational. But I think that Drake didn't do that. I think he spoke more to a generation than he did to
a culture.
I
agree. I think they've had different impacts, but equally massive impacts in what they impacted with their music. Like Jay-Z, he kind of created the mold for what a rapper could be. Didn't just have to be a rhymer. Didn't just have to be a dope. Like, you could do everything and then flip that into something else and keep flipping it and keep flipping it and keep flipping it. He became the blueprint. No pun intended. He became the blueprint for what a rapper is supposed to go for. But I think even though Jay-Z created a blueprint for what a rapper was, I think this underscores what you said even more. He dictated a culture. But I think what Drake did, even though hip-hop was always American culture and it was always quote-unquote pop culture, it was never on the pop charts at the same level. I think Drake took that culture and made it the generation's voice.
Well, Jay-Z's not a millennial.
I agree. No.
So it's like just in comparing it to our conversation before, this is mirroring exactly what we were talking about, where a previous generation can think something, like the actual people in that generation can think something about that particular artist of their generation and call it that artist is our artist because he came out during this time or whatever. And then how the younger generation, obviously the millennial generation looking at Drake, feel a very different way.
They both made their generations feel like they were their guy. Jay-Z moved the culture. Jay-Z grew the culture, and Drake pushed the culture into the mainstream.
Yeah.
But they both had the same weight in terms of effect on the culture, or on where they took it, or how they grew it. It had the same amount of power in it, just channeled in different ways. One channeled growth within culture, one channeled movement of culture, but equal amount of power used in different converters.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that if you're gonna go, then it would just be hard to really do like
there'd be no way to
track,
like you can't judge it.
You can't, because if you're thinking about, like, there has to be very, very specifics around how one would judge the scorecard. Because if you're going off of lyricism, I don't necessarily think a lot of people would pick Drake. Especially if you grew up with Jay-Z, you're out. Like, you will not be. And then people who are young are not going to tune in. They're just, the Gen Z does barely looks at Versus. It's always, every time we watch all of them, it's all old people, because that's our era of music. We know this era of music. So I really do feel like if they were gonna do this, they'd have to be very, very specific. Okay, we're gonna do a celebration.
Yeah.
Based on this.
So I think the 40 track verses should be called like a celebration versus a versus. Like the people who.
But the thing is, they all are supposed to be celebrations.
Maybe a different term, whatever another term we need to use.
I think it should be greatest hits.
Great, whatever. Just to distinguish that we've entered a different tier where this is no longer about check for check in any way. This is just to celebrate two of our goats that are like super goats. Not just goat, but super goats.
But part of the reason why people tune in is because of the scorecard. Even though it's a celebration, part of the reason is...
People will still make their scorecard, but it won't change the rating.
No, but people will make their scorecard, and I think it will just be a hot mess.
Yeah. Like, I see it as more so these verses, it'd be like an extension of verses that they could just do it as, let's put a 40 track listing of both of these guys and go back and forth, and then when it's done, we discuss as a culture what all of that music felt like for you. And like, it might reveal feelings that we didn't have for our culture of hip hop by putting what doesn't seem like a match but having equal weight in a big melting pot and seeing where it makes us think, like, you know what, you could see the continuum between from Jay-Z and the baton passage. Like, you could see from certain tracks where what was influence and why it's a continuation and why they're both taking it to highest levels.
I also think, though, I don't think there's very many Jay-Z fans
who want to hear Drake,
who like Drake. And I don't think that there are very, very many Drake fans that know Jay-Z's body of work like they know Drake's body of work. And I think for this to be effective and to be appreciated and to be like understood, to have that conversation of how did these songs make you feel at that time, has to be somebody
who's old enough
to know. They have to be a millennial. They'd have to be like in our age range, not a young millennial, where they listen to Drake's body of work and they listen to Jay-Z's body of work and they can draw the comparisons. This is a very niche audience because there's lots of people that I've met that hate Drake. Americans.
Yeah, very true.
And
I think they're more so salty about him. That's what it is.
But even if they're salty about him, and even if they can say, you know what, I can respect Drake for what he's doing, they won't know his music. They won't be able to, like, when Jay-Z's
digging his crates.
Yeah, when Jay-Z plays a song, they're not gonna be able to go, okay, that Drake song, I get why that made people feel a certain way or why that had the impact that it did. So it would be difficult, one, to have a discussion on with people who don't know their bodies of music equally.
All right, how about this? To end on a light note, think of your top 5 Drake songs or top 5 Jay-Z songs, whichever one you want to do first, and then do the next one, and I'll think of the same. I'll start with Jay-Z, and I'll name one of my 5. There's no order here whatsoever.
Yeah, why don't we pick the same songs?
Not necessarily. So for Jay-Z, Dead Presidents, as a cheat, I'm going to say all versions. That's 1. Number 2, once again, not in order. I'm going to go with You Don't Know, once again, all versions.
How did I know?
Then I'm going to go with Hard Knock Life, because I think that was his first crossover that really got him that mainstream attention. Hard Knock Life. Then I'm going to go with Is That Your Chick? And what should I put as my 5th J track? I feel like I haven't given Blueprint any respect yet. So I'm going to go with, I did give Blueprint respect, but You Don't Know.
I can't do this.
I'm gonna go with Big Pimpin' because it had UGK on it. Those are my 5 J tracks.
I can't do this. It's too soon. I need to think about it.
Well, it's not a binding list. These are my top 5 for sure.
I know, but I can't think of them. Like,
think of your Drake ones first.
I can't think of those right now. We always have these. We have these questions. We have these questions all the time. I can't choose a top 5.
Choose 5 that could be in it.
It's always based on mood and based by time.
Well, choose 5 that could fit any of those.
Oh my god. Well, for Jay-Z, okay, this is too hard. I would put You Don't Know in there easily. I would put Dead Presidents in there because I got to see that live, which was an amazing experience with Jay-Z and Nas post beef. That was great. I would put, I think I would put Sunshine in there. I love that song. You said just pick any.
Yeah.
I don't even know if these are my top. These are just like literally the songs that are coming to my brain. Oh, I put Song Cry in there. But see, I like that whole album. It's hard with Jay-Z. It's hard with both of them because I almost feel like their albums are songs. The whole thing. You can't skip. Like, I can't skip on Blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
And for Drake, I don't think I can skip on Take Care. Yeah. Did I name 5?
No. You got one more.
I just have Sunshine stuck in my head now. What's that song with Foxy Brown? But that's her song.
Yeah.
No, she did a feature on his song too.
Ain't no nigga like the one I got.
Is that the song?
Yeah.
She's a feature on that?
Ain't no. Yeah.
That one.
Alright. For Drake, let's see here. Girls Love Beyonce.
Which he didn't put, for all you young people, he did not put that on an album until late.
Care Package.
Which is not even a real album.
So we have Girls Love Beyonce. This Can Be Something.
Something.
Messages from You. March 14th. I'm going to go with Too Much.
I can't do this.
It's not a binding list, just some songs that would potentially still stick in the top 5 if another top 5 would be made.
Definitely Too Much. That is one of my favorite Drake songs of all time. Mainly because of the singer. Not because of Drake. What's the one with Stevie Wonder? The sample Stevie Wonder? Look What You've Done?
Look What You've Done.
No.
The one with 3 Stacks.
Where he says I shoulda. I don't know what the name of that song is, but that one. I'll just look. I swear that it's Look What You've Done.
Is that one? No.
Oh yeah, it is that one. That one with Stevie Wonder. Too Much. Oh, that's not it. I don't know what that song is.
The Real Her. That's the one with I can't play that.
The one with Stevie Wonder.
Okay.
Marvin's Room.
Okay.
Something. and it's the one off of the one where nothing was the same. It's like it's a banger.
Worse?
No.
The language?
Yeah.
Okay. Cinco. See? Vast catalogs. With smashes.
Yeah, but no, like that was a very preliminary. We should sit down and make a 40 track list.
Deal.
We'll make a 40 track list for this. We'll talk about it next podcast.
Cool. Ciao.
What do you mean, ciao?
Say two, no?
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 We have like this much left.
Okay.
Well, we can be done now, but look at that up.
Okay.
So yes, we will compile the list.
Yeah. Make a 40 track listing. It'll be fun as well to curate your top 40s for each. There are going to be some that are heartbreaking to leave out, but it'll be interesting to curate such a list.
I'm not going to put them in sequential order.
No, I can't do that.
That's impossible.
Je suis pas capable, ça, non.
That's
Vamos.
impossible.
No.
Anyways,
What?
that's all we have for this episode, which is called, again,
Leans, Taffies, and Rock. So lean with it, rock with it, like it's Laffy Taffy. You know what I'm saying?
As you can tell, I do not name the episodes.
Nope.
You do that all on
Oh, shake that Laffy Taffy. That Laffy Taffy.
Bye.